I sought out to find a place where humanity in all of its rawness and individuality was celebrated,
Okay.
and we could all grow together. Success was celebrated and hardships were carried through together, and no one was punished for making mistakes, but mistakes and risks were encouraged. Forget about networking, make friends. See every opportunity as an opportunity to make friends, and don't think about what they can do for you or what you can do for them, but truly build your network by building your friend base.
Welcome, everybody. We are really looking forward to today's conversation with Rowan Johnson and letting them tell us a bit about their adventure in the transition here from a recent career transition. And Rowan, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, looking forward to the conversation. So why don't we start at the beginning? Can you give us a sense what sort of prompted the initial thought of it's time for me to make a change?
You know, it's so funny. I actually reached out to executive resume writers almost 3 years ago, and that was two positions ago, believe it or not. Um, and really, I was in this place where I think, like a lot of people, I was hitting that glass ceiling of I had been in my career really trucking along for about 15 years, and I was solidly in the same place at that upper management level for a really long time. I was leading projects, I was leading people, but as an individual contributor.
Okay.
So I wasn't getting those like direct reports where I felt like I had I don't want to say power and authority, but really that ability to mentor and develop people on the level that I wanted to. I really just wanted to make that jump into more or less like company sanctioned leadership. I wasn't getting it. And so I reached out on a whim and had this amazing like 2-hour conversation with you all on what you could do. And that was free, by the way. So thank you. And this amazing, like really rich brainstorming session that sort of shook everything up and made me rethink first of all, what I was capable of, and also like take a long, hard look at what I was doing. Because like, obviously, definition of insanity, I had been doing the same thing for a really long time and nothing was changing. So ultimately, the desire for more meaningful and intentional leadership, feeling like I was doing sort of the same kinds of projects and wanting something different. And yeah, I guess those are the two main factors, really wanting to expand and grow and feeling like I wasn't doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you were thinking about the next role, what were you looking for? What were your goals, and how did you prioritize those? How did that help you in the both the pursuit of the new role, but also the decision process to say, hey, this role looks like a good one for me. This one's probably not, after I've had a conversation, probably not what I thought it was going to be. Can you give us a sense of what were you looking for and how that impacted your process?
One discovery I made over the months that we worked together was that it was less important to me, the actual job description. I thought that I needed to like really nail down what job I wanted. And for me, it was more about the culture that I wanted to belong to. I was working in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And just like I wanted to provide that for companies and people, I also wanted that for myself. I wanted to be seen as my authentic self, and I wanted to belong to an organization where success was celebrated and hardships were carried through together, and no one was punished for making mistakes, but mistakes and risks were encouraged. And so that became my sort of guiding light. I sought out to find either within one company or perhaps outside of the company I was in, a place where humanity in all of its rawness and individuality was celebrated,
Okay.
and we could all grow together. And so that was like my number one. And then beyond that was exactly what I've talked about before, that leadership piece. I knew I personally wanted to, I mean, that's why I reached out to an organization called Executive Resume Writers. Executive leadership was really, really important to me. And that was something I was very vocal to all of my leaders about too, because I was doing so much learning and development about, okay, what is executive leadership? What's the difference between being an executive and a manager? And I felt so ready. I was hungry for it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I wanted that executive leadership piece. I wanted to lead organizations from a high level into this post-COVID era, into this era that embraced equity, inclusion, belonging. Um, and I also work in the technical field. And so I wanted to leap forward into cutting edge technology too. So all of that came together, and I wanted to lead it all.
Got it. Well, also a bit, dare I say, inspiring, right? You said I was ready, I was hungry for it. Culture was absolutely central. In fact, you basically said culture was number one, which
Mhm.
also which also fits with the multiples of studies that say what's most important to you in your career, and money rarely makes the top three, right? And this is
No.
where people say, no, it's about responsibilities, it's about culture, it's about belonging and challenge and growth and all these things. And so you've got that, and then the hunger for the leadership, the culture, and the technology piece as well,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of that trifecta of a lot of things there. Hopefully, the culture isn't changing too much, and it's a culture of promoting the desire for moving up and additional
Mhm.
responsibilities and bringing value to the table, all then underlying the technology side of it as well, right? So which is, as we know, that is a moving target, and it seems like the last
Really,
couple of years it's moved faster than we've seen it move up until this point. So
it's an exciting place to be.
yeah, yeah, very exciting, very exciting. So getting ready for the transition,
Yeah.
what steps did you take to prepare for the search? Were there specific resources or strategies that you found particularly helpful?
Yeah. So, and this is where it gets a little personal,
Okay.
because actually I reached out to executive resume writers right after my father died. Um, and you all are not cheap. And that's okay. It actually, we talked about, what really wanting it and wanting to work for it. Um, when my father passed, he told me to use my inheritance to grow my career. And so the first purchase I made was your package. Because I took a hard look at, speaking of, definition of insanity, I had been doing the same thing forever. One of the main things that I realized, like, I hadn't updated apart from like putting my changing my work experience, but I hadn't taken a look at current trends in what are people looking for in a resume. Like the last time I actually took a class on resumes was when I was in college, you
Most of
know,
us, yeah, most of us, that's the case.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was really important for me to sit down and look at, okay, what does the landscape look like, not only in resume writing, period, because the company I was at certainly had resume writing resources for everyone. And you can do a YouTube tutorial or whatever, but specifically moving into the executive space, there are very specific things, as you well know, that folks are looking for that set you apart as someone ready for executive leadership. And I knew that that's not where I come from. That's not my parents' background. So I knew that I needed a consultant in order to reach that next level. So that was maybe the most important. part of my preparation, and not just the resume piece, but also, I mean, you have Alex, who's like your secret weapon when it comes to interview prep
Yeah.
as well. So not only did I have your team helping me, you know, we're talking interviews to really get to know me on a human level. I mean, folks were asking me like what I do in my free time, and like asking me about my kids, like what's important to me, to get this holistic understanding of who I am and what's important to me and what I'm looking for in order to help me build a resume that's authentic to who I am, but also what companies are looking for in executive leadership. That's above and beyond anything I was trained to do, you know, in my in
Yeah.
my senior class, you know. But then having very hard, and I'm talking brutal conversations with Alex on how is my poise, you know, what does my background look like when I'm doing an interview? You know, if it's in person versus virtual, what's my word choice? Do I stutter when like goodness gracious? But we have to have those hard conversations to understand what our presence is. It's intent versus impact. And that's not just true in interviews, but I use those skills every day as an executive. And so it doesn't just stop at the interview, but I get to carry those into my world now. So not to just sing your praises, but that was a huge part of my preparation. Besides that, uh, I talk a lot about networking with my mentees, and I know that that's coming up a little later, but I have to bring it up as preparation as well, because something I tell them is forget about networking, make friends. And that has never been more true for me personally before this experience, because I seek out for, I never want to just use a connection and
Yeah.
think of it as okay, one day they can do something for me.
Right.
But like we have Christmas together, we go out for drinks, we have lunch. I know their family, I know what sports teams they like, you know, I make friends. And sure enough, you know, I didn't know the people who were interviewing me. I didn't know a single person on the team that I was joining, but my friends did. And they went and asked them about me, or friends of friends. The network did its networking.
Yeah.
And it came down to it. And people said, yeah, that Rowan, they're a great person. And I loved working with them 10 years ago on this
Yeah.
one project that we did. So literally the interview started 15 years ago, you know?
Yeah. 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 Well, first off, I'm sorry to hear about, of course, your father, and a bit.
So,
I'm also honored that that was it's very, very good advice that we coach people on. But when we say it, it seems very biased. You know, you should be investing in your career. You should be investing in
yeah.
your career assets, your resume, your LinkedIn profile. But it sounds like that's worked really well, and um, you've taken the this experience and what you've learned, and you've taken it with you. And that's one of the other things we talk to people about too. It's not just about your next transition. It's about
Right.
the next decade or two, depending on where somebody is in their career, right? And when you get some of these things right, and you mentioned several of them, some of it is about the positioning of who you are and what you're looking for, the value that you bring. That's all in the career assets, right? Your resume, your
Mhm.
LinkedIn profile, but then
Yeah.
also those leadership skills, that leadership presence that you get to bring with you as well. Um, and you also mentioned, right, when was the last time we got training on this?
Right.
We were all back in school, and love the career centers at school. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but
Yeah.
they're coaching people very early in their career to get
Mhm.
that first role. Well, it's significantly different when you've got a decade or two under your belt, and we like to say the air gets thinner as you move
That makes sense.
up, and you have to be more targeted. You have to be clearer with your communication, and also clarity on what you're looking for, which comes back to the earlier question that we had. So uh, That's awesome.
You mentioned that my pronouns are they, them, so I think it'll be no surprise to anyone that I'm part of the LGBT plus community. So is my recruiter.
Okay.
It was so sweet. Like she had a big like rainbow banner on her email and was like, "Hi, Rowan. I hear you're interested in this technical director role." And I'm like, Indeed, I am. And yeah, I think I had one recruiter interview, and then it went straight from that to 3 days later, I had interviews with two VPs. From there, and this is the first time I've ever experienced this, but on the executive level, it's important to my company, which I love, to have an HR interview and a DEI interview. And then, and again, aligning with my personal values, that was so super important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all that happened over the course of about 2 weeks. And
Wow.
then like, let's rock and roll. I had planned on taking like 2 weeks of vacation and they went, nope.
Come on in.
Okay, let's go.
So
Party,
what?
cowabunga.
So your
Um,
recruiter was that first recruiter, were they internal or were they external hiring for the company?
oh, and forgive me, I didn't quite understand your question. They were internal to the company for which they hire.
Got it. Got it.
Now I see.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So in both cases, the previous role and this role, it was the internal recruiting side of things. Um, Larger company, right? So they tend to have deeper talent resources, and I think that's an important thing that we can share with
That is interesting.
our viewers, right? Because if you are in a small, if you're aiming for a small to mid-size organization, they don't have the same resources on the talent acquisition side of things internally, especially at
Mm.
the executive level. That's where they tend to lean on those executive recruiters on the outside to go out, find the top candidates, bring the finalists to the table. So how about surprises? Any surprises or challenges, and good or bad, that
Sure will.
you're willing to share?
I mentioned changing cultures and culture shock. Now, I'm an international traveler. I lived in Italy for many, many years. I speak many languages, and so I'm all about that growth mindset and growing roots wherever you're planted. Um, but it was fascinating to me to be dropped in a new, I'm on week 7, um, to be dropped in a new culture. And I thought, I know this is the same job I've been doing forever. It's just in a different place. And yet, acronyms, the way the organization is laid out, even what the same word means to different people, everything is different. And so even though I'm an expert in my field, I am a responsible individual, I'm a subject matter expert, and yet boy, do I feel like a newborn baby most of the time right now. And luckily, I mentioned finding an organization that aligns with my values. I'm so glad I did because they are holding my hand every step of the way. And I feel so nurtured and cared for from every angle, from the top down, from the bottom up, the team I lead, the team I follow, laterally, my partners, HR, everywhere, it like holding me in the light. So, another point for finding a culture that fits you, my friend. Um, but still, it's hard as someone who's been in my field for a very long time, considers myself very competent, very intelligent. It's hard to day in and day out humble myself and go, all right, where is this thing? What does that acronym mean? When do we do this? What is that event? You know? But also it's built me it's given me so many opportunities to build rapport with my team. I always try to find the silver lining, and it's okay, guide me. I'm fallible. Please show me where the bathroom is because I don't know where I am. And that's okay.
But doesn't that also, right? If you swap places with somebody, doesn't that also, for the people that have been in the organization for a while, when somebody new comes in, rather than the bull in the china shop, right? But somebody just says, look, I am new. I don't know what I don't know. Being vulnerable, right? And I think people see that and say, okay, great. Let it, as long as you're genuine, right?
Yeah.
And then people genuinely want to help. And I think my take on that is I think you earn respect coming into an organization that way, that'll pay dividends for, for years and years to come.
I really appreciate hearing you say that. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown and like leaning into vulnerability. And it's been sort of my mantra
Mhm.
lately is okay, we're gonna lean into this. It's uncomfortable and that's amazing. We're all gonna grow from this.
Yeah. Well, and kudos to you for being clear on culture being the most important thing, and then not sacrificing that priority as you went through, right? Because now you
Yeah.
can be completely vulnerable
Yeah.
because you're in a culture that you aimed to be in, right? So they're supporting you, and you'll pay that forward in the years to come as well. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
You said it went pretty fast.
Yeah.
So the decision process, was this a no-brainer for you? Was this I I really want to make sure that I cover these bases, or by the time you got through that pretty quick? I mean, I will say that was once they decided, once the recruiter uh, got you on the hook, so to speak, it was fast and furious. What was the decision process like for you?
It was hard, but also by necessity, it had to be quick. Um, Without going into too many details, it was a need that the company had.
Okay.
The My predecessor had left very quickly, and the backfill was needed, which is why I didn't have the opportunity, as I said, to take a vacation or anything. Um, which, if you know me as a person, definitely plays to my like. I love being the superhero. Like, help us, Obi-Wan, you're our only hope. Like, I'm in. And so, um, that definitely played a part. Like, okay, we need a decision right now. But also, as I mentioned before, it was it was 3 years, um, almost, since I had reached out to you fine folks and was feeling like I was hitting that glass ceiling. I had made a transition to a different role, and was doing my best to see if, okay, being in the same organization but just a different place might change things. Um, and to a degree, it did. But at the same time, it was really feeling like I needed to explore and grow roots in different soil,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps even just for a time. Sometimes I think we just get that feeling that the season is changing, especially when this moved forward so quickly. I'm not a very religious person, but I am spiritual, and it felt like it was happening for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out that this job classified itself as an executive role, and how long have I been asking to be pushed toward executive leadership, it just fit. It just felt right. And so I had to take it. And it didn't take me very long. I reached out. I surround myself with mentors, and I called all of them over the course of about a week.
Okay.
And every one of them, to them, it was a no-brainer,
Yeah.
which gave me confidence because I don't like making decisions like that in a vacuum. Of course, I have a partner and 2 children. We talked about it. Um, Not one person told me to hang back.
No doubt that was those close to you reading what you were saying. Like, you were
Yeah.
saying words, they may or may not have heard the words, but they know you well enough to say, look, Rowan, this is what you're looking for. This is it,
Yeah.
right? And that reassurance. But the other piece of that is, and not to be lost, and we've in one of my other client case studies, the same thing came up. This should be a team sport, right? You
Mm,
should have some people that you can talk to. Of course, you can talk to us, but also those people who have known you for a very long time, people who have worked with you that like and trust, that you can run. They know that you're not asking for anything more than just, can I explain this to you, and just get your feedback. And by them probably hearing that explanation, that's where the feedback became pretty clear. That would be my guess.
that makes a lot of sense.
Looking back, so you made the transition.
Mhm.
You put on the superhero cape. You were ready for it. Uh, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned that maybe you could share with others?
Something that stood out to me in our pre-talk was talking about how long things take. And in vulnerability, I'll share that that was quite devastating for me, and I had a lot of moments of doubt. I think coming up in my career, I looked at my executives in the different places I've been, and I thought, how lucky they are. They're born with silver spoons in their mouth. And looking back, I have such respect and empathy, admiration for their individual journeys, because my gosh, the years and years, even just from my saying I don't think I can do this anymore to where I am, to where I started 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, um, felt like an insurmountable amount of time. And I considered quitting several times. I mean, I love that you say it's a team sport, because truly, like, those closest to me, I've had the conversation so many times of, maybe I should just be a homemaker. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like, and nothing wrong with that. But for me, I've wanted a career so deeply. I want leadership in a corporate environment. That's where I've been driving my whole life. Um, so for me, that would be giving up. I wouldn't be happy. And yet I considered it so many times, because I thought that I just didn't have the stamina for it anymore. And so now what I say to my mentees, and really anybody who will listen, uh, is, if it's your dream, please don't give up. It sucks, and it's kind of supposed to suck. I, I'm gonna steal what you said about the air being thinner at the top, because like people die climbing up this mountain, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but gosh, it's worth it. It's so worth it if you can just make your way up here.
Yeah, well, and in credit to you, right? You had clarity on where you were headed.
Mhm.
Like, this is what I wanted, and not just the role, but the type of organization.
Yeah.
And despite it being difficult, you were persistent, right? And that persistence over time, well, it's the famous quote, right? The persistence will, it trumps talent, it trumps intelligence, all of these things. If you're persistent, you will absolutely get to where you want to be. With the caveat to our audience, but keep in mind, Rowan knew what they wanted, right? They were very clear about the type of company and the role and being ready. And I think it's the combination of knowing what you want and having the clarity, and then the persistence. I feel like the success is inevitable, right? And it might happen faster than you think, but it might happen slower, especially in this market. This market can be really slow right now.
Market is
It's a
tough.
tough market. It's a tough market. It's not what it was 2 years ago. But then that just highlights the need for, do you have clarity,
Mm.
and are you being persistent with your efforts, right? And it's the combination of those two things. Most people, most of the time, don't have that level of clarity and may not be willing to be as persistent in the long term to get to where they want to be. And I'm not just singing your praises. You absolutely did it right. And
Oh,
I
thanks.
I appreciate you sharing that. Uh, any sort of final advice and any additional advice for somebody who's looking to make a transition and might be contemplating a similar change?
One that I'll add to the previous bit of advice is on along the journey, something that I think kept me sane. And it's like the captive animal. Like while you're waiting, have a ball in your enclosure. And for me, it was leadership development. Even though I wasn't in an executive role, I was constantly taking advantage of every opportunity, both inside my company and outside, to take leadership classes, watch keynote speakers, go to conferences, whatever I could to keep learning the language and develop myself. And, it's the sort of fake it till you make it. Like, I'm going to become the best executive as that I can before I'm actually an executive. And it kept giving me hope and making me feel like, gosh, when I get there, I'm going to be so ready.
Yep.
And I think that helped keep me sane.
So you kept busy with the leadership development. It obviously, like you said, it gave you hope, right?
Mhm.
It was honing your mindset on this. This is what I'm going for. This is the presence I want. Uh, did that keeping busy? Did the leadership development efforts that you were doing during your search, did that come up at all during any of the interviews?
When you say come up, like I wasn't specifically asked like what leadership development are you taking?
Right.
But what I'll say is that language that I learned came came up in droves, to be honest. I mean, in the role that I was previously in, like no one talked about ROIs, no one talked about largely like the different financial aspects of executive leadership that I was just learning because it was fun for me. um, Even like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding like different aspects of different cultures and how they contribute to the workplace, and interview skills on the interviewer side of things. All of those things were just things I was learning out in the world, but not actively doing in my current role. Um, and so, yes, I would say definitely being able to speak to them while not actively having them as part of my role was incredibly beneficial to my interview experience, 100%. I probably just want to reiterate that piece. I'm like a broken record at this point, but finding the culture that fits for you and make friends.
Mhm.
I mean, truly, every step of the way, inside and out, go to the networking mixers. Even if you feel like you don't know anybody, you might run into somebody you do know. And if you don't, you're going to make a new friend.
Mhm.
See every opportunity as an opportunity to make friends, and don't think about what they can do for you or what you
Yeah.
can do for them, but truly build your network by building your friend base. 'Cause you never know where it's going to go.
I Rowan, I feel like that is such a great thought to end on. And I'll attempt to reiterate, because networking, when we talk to our clients about networking, many of them have said, look, for the last 2 decades, I've just been brought from one role to the next. Somebody knew me. I got internally promoted, and I've had my head down and just
Mm.
doing amazing work. I haven't really been developing proactively my network. And then so there are a couple of things. One is we sort of challenge, well, that you might think that, but probably you have a pretty deep network. You just don't think of them that way, which then
That's a good point.
it leads me to your point of, but do you have friends? Do you have friends that you work with that have worked for you that at other companies that you're no longer, working with? Well, yeah, I have them. There it is, right? And I think your emphasis on build those lasting friendships, that just lands so much differently than let's go out and do some networking, right? It's the difference between I don't know, the checkered jacket and white shoes. Do we still say that? I don't know if we still say that or not, but probably some folks are shaking their heads and I have no idea what he's talking about. But the point being, oftentimes people bristle at the concept of networking But then when you really step back and you say that these are friendships, that this isn't just transactional. And if you interact with the give before the get, then you're going to find that's an accelerator as well.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, Rowan, thank you so much. This has been,
oh my gosh, thank you. This has been a blast.
This has been so good, and I really appreciate you being willing to share some of your experiences here. And hopefully people got a lot of value from today's conversation. And folks, if you're watching and saying, I'd like that kind of support as well, by all means, we invite you to visit executiveresumewriters.com and see if maybe we're a fit for you in the process. But signing off, Rowan, thank you again for sharing your experience with us.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.